Hi, my name is Zhao. I am the Executive Director of the World Affairs Council of Kentucky and Southern Indiana. We are a nonprofit organization located in Louisville, Kentucky that promotes global awareness through international exchange, dialogue, and learning. Ahead of this year's elections, I had the opportunity to sit down with two of our candidates for mayor, Bill Dieruf, the Republican candidate for mayor, and Craig Greenberg, the Democratic candidate for mayor. We had the opportunity to sit down and talk about their thoughts on globalization and the international community in Louisville, which are issues that have not been discussed thus far in any of their conversations, debates, or forums. To get us started, let me set the context. More than ever, cities and city governments are leading the way on a number of global issues impacting our local communities. These days, those issues have gone far beyond the traditional priorities, scope, and resources of local governance. These include, but are not limited to, issues such as climate change, immigration and refugee resettlement, inclusive and accessible services for culturally diverse communities and populations, attracting foreign-born talent and foreign investment, just to name a few. This is a pivotal time and opportunity for our mayoral candidates to share their vision of what globalization means for Louisville, what their priorities, and in some cases, roadmap for making Louisville a welcoming city for all. The World Affairs Council will be asking these questions that you have submitted through our forum earlier on this last month. These questions reflect issues that are top of mind for you. And I want to thank you in advance now for all of your work and for sharing your concerns with us. I hope you will get something out of these conversations. Thank you. Welcome, Mayor.
Well, thank you for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to get us started, but to get started, I'm going to provide more of a context for us. More than ever, I think cities and city governments are really leading the way on a lot of global issues impacting our local economy, our local communities, right? These days, those issues really have gone beyond some of the traditional scope, resources, and maybe priorities of local governments. So some of these are, not limited to, but include issues such as climate change, immigration and refugee resettlement. We talk about inclusive, accessible services for culturally diverse communities, perhaps, and attracting and retaining foreign-born talent and foreign investment, just to name a couple of those. So this is really a pivotal time for us and an opportunity for our mayoral candidates to share your vision of what globalization looks like for Louisville and what your priorities and maybe a roadmap for making Louisville more of a welcoming city for all. So the questions today are really curated from a number of people who submitted their concerns, their questions about this throughout Louisville. So I guess we'll get started. Okay. Well, let's start with the business economy because, Mr. Dieruf, you do come from a business background,
True.
Right? I guess I read that Dieruf Hardware opened its doors in 1946. It's the oldest family-owned and still operating business.
True.
And you have worked really to make J-Town a place of economic growth and development for businesses of all sizes in your many years as mayor here. So with that, based on your experience, how would you rate Louisville's environment for foreign businesses, foreign companies, investment, for example, as compared to our peer cities?
Louisville and J-Town are two different things. So if you talk about Metro Louisville, I would use the word confusing. Because what happens is a company wants to locate here and they're not sure if GLI, who is part of the business community, or Louisville Forward, who is part of Metro, who is in charge and which way do I go? And each one of them has specialties that they can present. So what we need to do is make sure that we get rid of the layers of bureaucracy so that when a company comes here, they have one person to contact and to move it forward. And generally, that is the business needs to talk to business. They want to realize how easy it is to move into here and how to move through the different systems of the government. And we need to make Metro out of that and put them in the system of efficiency of letting businesses get here quicker and get into position to where they're opening their doors quicker than ever before.
So you're saying maybe, do you still see that GLI and say what the current economic development in Louisville, say Louisville Forward, they should all be in one versus having this split as it is?
An organization like GLI before was the business attractor for our community. So they would still should be the one, they should be the one now that's attracting businesses here. And once they get here, you would have a part of government. When we are needed, we are there. But when we're not, we should be out of the way. And so many times government tries to take control rather than try to just guide and help when they're needed. So GLI would be the one that would attract, lead them through the process, help them find through the MSA, because Louisville is more than just downtown Louisville, outside Louisville. We're talking about this Indiana, southern Indiana, Oldham County, Spencer County. All of us need to work together to attract businesses here. We're not in competition. So in order to do that, the larger MSA, it has to be an outside organization that is business driven.
Gotcha. And more on the question of, I guess, the foreign investment. Do you see that being any different from any other companies from, say, the U.S. or other companies that's more familiar with the overall cultural environment that we are in? So a company from Korea, company from Germany, China, et cetera, those kinds of foreign investments. Are there particular types of ways that we can make it easier for them to relocate here? Or do you think we're doing pretty well?
I don't think we're doing very well. And it's, yes, there is a difference between international and local, basically because of the federal laws and everything else that stop you from coming here and hinder you from coming here. We need to make the laws easier so that you can operate amongst all the world. We originally set up years and years ago that you had your small cities that everybody was inside the city. Then it became a America that you're operating on. Now we're global. I mean, we've learned from the pandemic we're global. I mean, the pandemic affected everybody all around the world, and business is all around the world. Companies are growing and moving and should be able to adjust accordingly. So making it easier for them to move here would be a great boom, especially since we have people like UPS and large companies like Ford, and we have the new battery plant. We have to make it easier for companies to locate here and to get rid of the bureaucracy that it takes to open your doors on the first day.
Okay. Well, kind of related, but a little bit different. You know, a lot of our workforce is really comprised of many foreign-born populations, right? We have one of, you know, a very large growing international community. I think that immigrant population has grown over 40% in the 10 years and is projected to continue to grow in the next 5 years. I think, you know, some of the stats say that immigrants possess about $2 billion of the city's spending power and are 46% more likely to be entrepreneurs than native-born residents. And we see pockets of those kinds of communities in various parts of the city, whether it's along the Preston Highway, Bushel, and Woodlawn areas, right? So the question is really, how can we, and how would your administration, if you were to be elected, be able to engage these newcomers in our civic, our economic and social life more effectively?
So the one thing would be the economic, as far as the business climate and jobs and everything. So we got Bridge the Gap Act that hopefully a person comes to America, they can't use their talents that they have learned from other countries to bring them here to be useful, and we need them. So we have to have ability to take that and maybe take a couple more courses, but be able to go to the profession that they have chosen and that they are great at. And then the people that are here, we have to make sure that when they come here, that it's easy for them to open their businesses because they come from a different culture, a different type of government. So we have to be able to adapt that to show them that how we do things in a friendly, organized manner, that it's not bureaucratic. And so in the future, we both have to have the housing and the jobs and the businesses to where the people coming here, they go, wow, this is the best place to come live.
Yeah. So building off of that, a lot of immigrants, particularly refugees, they come to Louisville. We're one of the larger settlement cities, regions in the U.S. There is quite a bit of a long waiting period before they can be legally able to work in the city, right? But they are highly educated. They are of working age. Any thoughts on how we might be able to bridge that little bit of time frame?
Well, that is a federal issue, but we got Kentucky Refugee Ministries and Catholic Charities that work with them to help them get it faster. But the problem I found in meeting with them is the legal system is very cumbersome, and we don't have enough legal assistance to help the people through it. So the one thing would be able to increase the amount of legal assistance. So at least that'll help bridge the gap to have the people when they're here that they can get a job sooner.
Great. Okay. It's going to be it's certainly an issue that a lot of cities are going to be dealing with. Well, let's talk about education. That's an area that I think we're all very concerned about. And for us, we were, as part of the World Affairs Council, we really think about education in a much broader perspective in terms of what does it mean for students to be prepared to live in a global society, right? So global education is really essential to meeting the needs of that future workforce we're talking about. And whatever skills we had needed in the past have shifted, right? We have to have more competencies to succeed in a really globalized world. So I wanted to get your thoughts on, how might you support efforts to help our youth to be more prepared and live and work productively in a globally diverse environment, whether it's here in our own communities that's going to be diverse, or having the ability to compete globally, wherever they may be. How can our community support our youth?
So we both have those youth that have come from other countries that are a part of our education, and we have the youth that have grown up here that's part of our education. And the co-mingling is something that you learn by getting to know people. And one of the things that J-Town did this year is we had a culture fest, because we wanted to realize that how many different cultures we had in our city. And by people coming out, they understood the dress, the food, the culture, and they got to talk to different people to understand that we're all the same, but we're all going for the same mission. Now, when we start talking about the Jefferson County schools, I believe they have over 150 different dialects. And so the ESL has a very challenging situation just to be the educator to help to get across the language barrier. And I believe that we have to show the youth that are here what the rest of the world is. Unless we expose people to it, they don't realize what else is out there and what advantages it is to go to other countries and learn, to do cross culture learning, not necessarily just stay here. Then we also have, as a board member of University of Campbellsville, we have 5,000 to 6,000 students coming from India to come to J-Town, where Campbellsville University is, to learn IT. But we don't do a great job of keeping them here, to having them say, we need you here in Louisville, we need you to stay in Louisville because we need your jobs. So it's not only the kids that are in the younger grades that we have to help to make sure that the cultures are, and the United States is a melting pot of all cultures, so we got to get back to where we are a melting pot, and how do we work with that? But also the students that come, that we want them to stay after they have the training and education.
Right. Well, it's a challenge right now because we have there's a lot of international issues that may be really out of our control, right, at the local level. So that kind of takes me to our next question, which is really about your general view of how what we call subnational governments, like the mayors and the governors, the governments at this level, and really seeing how they might impact more of international issues, right? So, for example, we've seen, the importance of local and state governments impacting global policy, like climate change. We had the C40 Cities climate leadership group back that started a couple years ago, and then, of course, with the Russia's war in Ukraine, the conference mayors also came out to kind of take a position on what do we think about this war, and how do we support the communities in our local communities. So I'm just curious, how do you see Louisville within this context of the bigger world that we live in, right? As mayor, what would your priorities be, and just your general view about subnational government role in foreign policy and global issues?
Well, Louisville started a global action plan in 2016, and it hasn't really been initiated, or I don't know if it's succeeding, failing. It's a plan that's on the shelf. We need to take that and readapt it to the global act and make them work together to where we can have the people coming here in the professions they need to be. But as far as working with other cities, the one thing I can tell you that I was president of all the cities in the state for several years during the pandemic, which was very interesting. And so what we started at that time was Cities Helping Cities. And it flourished, grew exponentially because during the tornado and the floods, we were all helping each other. So when we start looking international, it's not any different than what we do on a local basis. Of Cities Helping Cities, it's an organization whereby if a city needs our help, the people of all the different cities say, we're here to help you at a certain situation. Mainly, we're going to look in the future is not as far as what government different cities have or what international governments, but how do we work with the citizens in that city as far as education, workforce, housing, food subsidy. So how do we make sure that everybody across the world is working together the same way we do on our state level? So that it's very important that we have sister cities that we work with, because when you have a sister city, you're very much connected. You get to know the people. So then when a situation arises, they know to come back and say, we need help, and we know what help is there because we already have it organized in Cities Helping Cities.
Well, thank you for bringing up sister cities, because the World Affairs Council actually administered the sister cities programs and relationships on behalf of the city. And we have 9 sister cities, as you may know. Not all of them are active. And over the years, as we become much more globalized with just any part of the world, the idea of sister cities really kind of is a little bit uncertain these days, right? So you just mentioned that you think that city to city, that government level perhaps might be a way to kind of restart some of these relationships. So when you think of sister cities, what's the best way do you see leveraging those relationships both ways?
Well, as I mentioned, as president of Kentucky League of Cities, in visiting 187 cities in our state, I realized that we have so much connectivity of alike that we need to get to know 9 cities or more. We need that to grow so that when one city needs something, the other city's there to help. And it may not be necessarily a tornado or a flood.
Right.
It simply could be a mayor or another city calling and say, hey, what do you do about code enforcement? What do you do about law enforcement? So that we're working internationally on solutions that one city may have found a solution to. So that's how sister cities are the best worked through the government. That we work at the government level how to provide the services for our citizens that somebody else may have already found a better way, and we learn from. It's not many times sister cities, people think it's kind of cute to say that we're a sister city, but the working relationship with the 2 governments is essential for a world to be that everybody can go and travel and enjoy and be a better world for everybody.
Well, it's very heartening to hear. So we will take that as, yes, you are committed to sister cities relationships.
Well, as a person that represented all cities, I am very much, yes,
That's
city
wonderful.
oriented.
And sister cities have traditionally been very much along cultural educational lines. And the idea of really kind of taking it back in some ways to this city to city, more at the governance level is a really good area for opportunities of growth. So thank you for that. Now, last question, and this is really kind of taking all of this together, all in terms of administration. If you were to be elected, the previous 2 mayor's administrations have all had some kind of office that managed the globalization efforts, whether it's Office for Globalization or the Office for International Affairs, called by different things. But there is a little bit of difference. I believe the International Affairs Office is much more general, whereas the Office for Globalization sits inside the Economic Development arm of the city. I'm just curious, one, if you were to be elected, would you have a similar office in your administration? Will you continue to have something like that really manages, and what might it look like? Do you see it as something that really sits in economic development or in community or in something a little bit different?
So for Louisville to be a community that is of everybody, I mean, I don't have to tell you that Louisville's community, the Cuban community, is the second largest in the United States, only second to Miami.
Right.
So we have to have something that's welcoming to everybody that wants to move here, because the people that are moving here now, we have to have an international affairs office, yes. And that's for the families and the education and the jobs, for the government to be there for when they need help. We also have to have that back to the sister cities, to where cities helping cities, that international has to be there in order to have the connectivity of working with the other cities. But as far as economic development, that should come through the business-to-business organization like GLI. Now, government is there to be a partner, but the business actually, we should be looking toward GLI to be internationally attracting businesses here. And then once we get locally, we have to be able to make it a system that is very non-bureaucratic and efficient, and a easy learn to be able to open a business, to buy a house, to be able to get through the system of where do I call, who do I call. So that is very much needed. And then, but we also have to have the people that are here already, like Catholic Charities or Kentucky Refugees, they are the pros. And there's other organizations like them. I don't want our government to be the ones to do what they're doing best. I think we should support them because they are a continuation beyond my term. And so that you support the industries that are here for a lifetime, and we just help them move the city forward to engage the people that are here and to attract the people from around the world that this is the best place to be.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. I think we need to tell GLI they need a director for globalization sometime soon. Should you be elected. Well, anyway, thank you so much for taking the time, and best of luck on the campaign. I know it's a kind of a sprint to the last couple of days in addition to your full-time job. But thank you so much for taking the time again.
Thank you very much. Thanks for coming out to see me.
Absolutely.